Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Bench Report with EJ and Jake. Jake, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fabulous. Just trying to beat out this Vegas Heat, man. It's 120, but you know what? What's hotter than that is we got NBA playoffs, man. I can't wait for it to start.
All right, and joining us today is Kris Norton. Kris, you give yourself a little introduction.
Hey, how's it going? Well, I went to school with this guy over here, right there, at IUPUI. I'm up in Minnesota, and I'll tell you, enjoy the heat while it lasts. That's my plan. I am literally about a half mile from the Canadian border. We got down to -40 last winter, so I'm on the other side of that. But I've been doing play-by-play. I've got a radio show up in International Falls for KGHS and KSDM. Ready to talk some hoops. Been too long of a wait.
Yeah, hey, we never thought that they would come. All right, so today starts the new playoffs coming in. So, gentlemen, here we are, playoffs. So we're gonna start with the Lakers Blazers series. Now the Blazers have been catching heat coming in due to Damian Lillard's MVP bubble run, scoring consecutive 50, 60-point games, just keeping them in there. And now that they got the AFC, they're going to play the Lakers. So, gentlemen, starting with Jake, what are your thoughts on this series and Damian Lillard's run in this playoffs?
Well, you know what? Like everybody says, anytime that he is red hot, it's always Dame time from here. And so Portland's really been catching fire. And I know that there were a bunch of teams during the bubble that had been catching fire. Phoenix was one of them. We thought, at some point, Memphis was going to be one of the other teams, but Portland has not stopped themselves short, especially in clutch shots in games that really matter. And so for me, the Lakers and Blazers series, I think, is going to be really exciting. I mentioned this on my show over the weekend about potentially this going to 7 games, and maybe Dame might upset the Lakers. Listen, I love LeBron and I love Anthony Davis, but the fact of the matter is, when you look at outside of the starting 5 of that roster, this bench really needs to get going. They're hurting without Avery Bradley, one of their best on-the-ball defenders. You also got to hope that Alex Caruso will give you some good quality shots and points off the bench. And everybody's got to play their roles. They got to play defensively. They got to be efficient in their shooting, and not to mention ball distribution. That is the biggest thing that we've been seeing since the restart of the NBA and going into the playoffs. Ball distribution has to be key for some of these teams, because if you want to ensure good quality minutes and keeping the leads for your team, you can't afford to make mistakes, especially even when you look at teams like the Clippers with Kawhi, or even the Bucks with Giannis. And so I think with the Lakers and Blazers, the one thing that I think will be key for Portland is the shooting efficiency between Dame, CJ McCollum, and so many others on their roster. But I think if you're the Lakers, if you want to save yourselves all the way through the 7 games, you got to trust your passes. You got to be efficient with your shots, and just it's basically race against time at this point, and time has to be on the Lakers side.
Kris, what are your thoughts on this series and Dame's bubble?
You know what? Obviously, with 2020, nothing's going to be typical, right? So you've got a 1-8 matchup. You've got Damian Lillard, LeBron James. I'm a little worried about Anthony Davis. His game against the Pacers looked anything but Anthony Davis-like. And Jake, like you said, Avery Bradley, who else you got? I mean, that's been a hallmark of LeBron James' teams in his tenure in Cleveland, Miami, Cleveland, now LA, where you get these role players, and on paper it looks really good. Once you put it into practice, some of that fuels, I think, that 3-6 finals record, because some guys aren't going to step up. You're going to have J.R. Smith doing whatever J.R. Smith does. But on the other side, I understand that it's Dame time, but how long can he hold that up? I mean, is he able to go 7 games? He might be able to, but is McCollum? Who else is going to step up on that team and say, you know what, I could be a consistent third scorer? Because the Lakers have the benefit of the doubt where, you know what, Kuzma, maybe there's a Kuzma game, and that's the height of his pressure. He doesn't have to do much. But for the Blazers, I think their bench is a little deeper, but they're going to have to rely on that scoring night in, night out. I think this one is going to go 5 games. I've got the Lakers in 5. I think the first 2 are going to be pretty close. Another thing that's odd is the home court advantage. There is none. Are we going to see, typically Lakers in game 1 and 2, there'd be all out, both teams gunning for it in game 1, home court advantage in game 2, but then you get the outburst of scoring in game 3 where the road team comes back home. You've got the intensity of the crowd, and that's not there. Where's that second win going to come from if you're the Blazers?
Yeah, this is absolutely true. I'm with you with that one, Chris, because I even mentioned this also with the Stanley Cup playoffs in hockey, because the fact of the matter is there is no home field advantage. There is no home ice, and neither is there home court for either one of these teams. But I will tell you this, it really kind of puts all these players in perspective of who truly wants it more. It's developing that leadership role for not even just for guys that have been veterans in this league, but even for some, like you take, for instance, Boston with Jason Tatum. I mean, the fact that he lost both Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving, he stepped up as a rookie in a role where he led Boston into the Eastern Conference Final. And that's something that I think we'll very much expect for all of these teams in the NBA of who truly wants to win this championship more. And I mentioned it, Stanley Cup and the NBA playoffs, these are the championships that I truly believe will matter in the end, because the season's over and we should have already been in playoff mode. Now it's officially here, and it's time for everybody to start stepping up at 110% and get it going.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of people are picking the Blazers because they're red hot, fueled. Damian's leading the charge, but when we look at the Lakers, I mean, you got LeBron. LeBron has never lost in the first round. And I mean, also, like, when you look at their team, they also have AD, and I think Rondo's coming back, and those two were key parts. And when the Pelicans swept the Blazers, a couple seasons ago, so they know how to deal with CJ and Dame coming in. And it's just like when you have Frank Vogel, defensive mind, I think he can come up with something to deal with Dame, because let's get the ball out of Dame's hand. Let's see if, CJ McCollum, Gary Trent can shoot the ball and win them the game. Because, hey, just like in that Nets game, double Dame, let everyone else make those shots for them and stuff. And it's just that the bench is going to be really key for the Lakers, because this is really going to be a good test, because we haven't seen them come together, especially in the bubble and stuff. So I have the Lakers winning at least in 5 games. Hey, maybe it might be a sweep, but I think that the Lakers, are just going to show everyone, that the Blazers are they're hot in these 8 games, but they can deal with them. All right, so going into our next series, if you take it away, Jake, we're going to go with the Mavs and the Clippers coming in. What are your thoughts on that series coming in?
So you're going to love this, because I'm going to end up posting this up here on the network soon, because I had I just got fresh out of a cold shower, man. I'm telling you, this heat has definitely worn me out. Needed something to cool off, but I only had one problem. I couldn't decide which T-shirt to choose. Was it going to be Kawhi or was it going to be Luka? So here on this show, you already know what I'm going to represent, and I'm going to represent the Clippers here tonight, because listen, I know a lot of people have speculations about what happened with the Clippers coming back into the bubble and into the NBA season, going into playoffs. But the Clippers, what people fail to realize is they are just as smart as you think that they are. The fact that everybody is 110% healthy, we know with Montrezl Harrell and Lou Williams and a little bit of Patrick Beverley leaving the bubble at the time, but they're going to be ready to go. And this is one where the Clippers, it's championship mode for them. They have a goal. They have something that they're chasing for. And listen, it's not to take away from the Dallas Mavericks, because Luka's been playing great. He's been showing that he's more than just a player that's just going to rack up points and stats. He's truly a competitive champion. And I think somewhere down the road in his future, he will be. But this is where it's going to be the first step for him. And I think it's going to be an exciting series. I do see this kind of going into 6 and the Clippers taking it away from here, because it's not going to be easy to put away guys like Luka or guys like Kristaps Porzingis. So I think you're going to get an exciting matchup of both shooting, defense, ball distribution, and not to mention clutch shots when it's needed, when you've got 5 minutes left of a fourth quarter. And I think that's good. What's going to be exciting and what the fans really, really want from here in this series.
I'd agree going probably 6. And I think the Mavericks, if they don't do it tonight, they've got the highest factor of coming out and punching somebody in the mouth, being the Clippers. And I understand that you've got Kawhi Leonard. You've got the team. You've got Paul George. But Luka's a guy that can come in and take a shot. And I think what I've been thinking the past couple days, it's hard to build a team around a center or power forward because who's going to take that shot? Luka can take that shot, but he's also going to make everybody around him better. They're going to be able to knock down those shots as well. And you saw, the fancy footwork behind the back, between the legs, but he can make any pass really he wants to out on the court. Not the flashy style, but the stuff that's going to put points on the board. If we're going to say biggest possible upset, that I would say 60-40. If you're going to look at all those games and say, hey, this one's got a shot to go the distance, I would say this one just because of who they're putting out on the court. And Paul George, being in Indiana, we're quick to point it out, but he's not exactly the best in those big game situations. He has to step up, and that's pretty much what they have to do. But we'll see if they're up and ready for the first round.
Yeah, it's like when we look at Paul George, there are so many highlights, especially in the playoffs, of him getting beaten. Last year with Damian Lillard hitting that game winner, and then he got embarrassed by the Jazz the year before that. And it's just like back when he played the Heat the first time around, and the second time around, in that 7-game series, game 1, when they should have won that game, LeBron goes by him, and Frank Vogel had to take out Roy Hibbert, I don't know, for whatever reason. And LeBron just blows by him, gets an easy 2 points to win that game and steal game 1. So he's been beaten multiple times, especially in critical playoff spots. And when you got somebody like Luka, is he really up to the challenge? Can he really show that, he's playoff P and not George Paul? Is he ready for that? And having Kawhi Leonard, and Kawhi has been there. He's done it time and time again, especially against some of the best teams. So having him there will be helpful. But it's just that Kristaps Porzingis is a 7'3" player. Like, who's really going to guard him on the team? Are they really going to put Zubac out there for a long time just to try and guard him? So I think he's going to be a playoff matchup that's going to, be really terrible for the Clippers coming in. But hey, I like the Clippers bench, especially with Lou Will coming back, Trez, and stuff like that. So I think that, hey, they got a shot, but I think this can go 7 games at least. I think that the Clippers can pull it out. All right. So coming into our third series, we're going to be talking about the Pacers and Heat matchup. And now before we get right into it, I got to get right into their extension of Nate McMillan. So last week, they extended Nate McMillan to a 1-year extension. And it's just, I don't understand why they would do something like this. Now, when we look at Nate McMillan, in this 3 years, before that, being a head coach of the Pacers, he has lost in the first round 3 straight times. He got bounced twice by LeBron and then by the Boston Celtics last year. And it's just like, why would you extend first round Nate? Why would you bring him back for another year? It's just like, when we looked at swept in the first time by the Cavs, 7 games the second time, and the third time he got swept again. Now, he didn't have Victor Oladipo, but that was again when the Boston Celtics were like, they weren't themselves coming in, especially like, with the whole Kyrie situation. It's just, I don't understand that. And it's just that he has never finished. Well, this is his best finish this season, being 4th in the East, but it's just that it's the bubble. So I don't really take it as a really big accomplishment. So he hasn't finished top 3 before. And we look at someone like, he replaced Frank Vogel coming in. And Frank Vogel, he won a playoff series, and people are going to say, well, he had Paul George. Well, back in his second year, they beat Orlando, and Paul George, that was not a great playoff run in his second season. He had the Danny Granger. They just got David Weston, Roy Hibbert, and it's just that he was able to win a series with those players. And what has Nate McMillan done? He hasn't won a series, and it's just that when I look team to team, it's just that this team looks like a lot better than the team back then. And it's just that you haven't been able to win a series with, you have Oladipo, Sabonis, and then I think he had PG that 1 year and he couldn't win a game versus him. So I don't know what's going to happen, but this is really going to be a big test versus the Miami Heat. And he has to win some playoff series. And I don't know. I'm just perplexed by it. So Jake, what is your thoughts on this Miami Heat series? And are we going to see a lot of TJ versus Jimmy coming up?
I think that we are. I don't believe that this whole tussle between Jimmy Butler and TJ Warren thing is over yet. I think it's only just been the start of it, and it's only getting better in a playoff series where it matters. And so, but going to your point, you're absolutely right. I mean, first of all, look at what's happening with Philadelphia with Brett Brown. I mean, the fact of the matter is that Philadelphia, they can't figure this thing out. This process thing is not working. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid just don't work with each other on the court. But outside of it, coaching has to matter. Somebody has to be the leader on the floor and even in the locker room to getting these guys ready to go. And, it was tougher for Indiana, especially when, Domantas Sabonis was out. But guys have stepped up at this time. TJ Warren had some games where he played really well. Victor Oladipo stayed steady. But the only factor that I hope can be hot at the right moment is Miles Turner. Miles Turner has been silent all throughout this whole time. And I think it's a lot of adjustments, and I do believe that there are, some questions into minutes and shifts and stuff like that for him to come in, put up X amount of points, and even be efficient on the court, whether it's offense or defense. And that's something where Indiana needs to use it to the best of extent, because you're talking about a Miami Heat team that not everybody had good speculations of. But Eric Spoelstra is a heck of a coach, and Jimmy Butler's coming into a role where it's elevating guys like Bam Adebayo, Kendrick Nunn, and so many other young kids. Now, this is a young team, so there is a lot of pressure for Miami all the way through in this series. So I think this is going to go all the way to 7, but I'm going to have to lean on Miami's side up here on this one, even though I think it'll be an exciting 7-game series between Indiana and Miami. But I think at the end of the day, if I'm looking at players who have clutch shots at the right times, I have to go with Jimmy Butler on that one. But it's not to take away from guys like Oladipo and many others to step up, but that's where Indiana has to be key for them, and they have to get these guys like Miles Turner going in all these important roles.
Kris, what are your thoughts on this series?
You know what? I agree with Miles Turner, but without Domantas Sabonis, it's just not going to happen. Bam Adebayo is going to drive Turner into the ground. Batadze is not ready. Victor's not back to 100%. We've seen the flashes, but he's really not there. And we can talk about the TJ Warren, Jimmy Butler storyline, beat that into the dirt. But Jimmy Butler's got the better of him. Even if TJ Warren does win that matchup, what are we looking at here? I mean, Brogdon has been injury-plagued this entire year, really his whole career. And on the other side, it just seems like a better mix of players, healthy at the right time, 4 or 5. Who gets the 4 seed doesn't really matter. I could see it 6. I could see it 5 in favor of the Heat. I mean, it could go 7 if the Pacers put things together. Could they win the series? Absolutely. What I want to focus on, though, EJ, you had mentioned, why are the Pacers extending Nate McMillan? And the reason why is we're talking about all these big names in the past. The Paul Georges, Roy Hibbert for that one playoff season. You got Domantas Sabonis, Victor Oladipo, TJ Warren. What's the common thread with all those guys? They've been traded for or they've been drafted by the Pacers. And the reality is, if you're an Indiana fan, if you're a small market fan, we're not a destination. We're not going to get the marquee free agents, and that's true for coaches as well. It's going to extend to that. So you've got a guy that's got a philosophy, defense, lines up with what Indiana basketball wants to be. We are Indiana basketball. Play the right way. And I know that he hasn't won, but he's also had a revolving cast of guys. Victor Oladipo has been in and out of the lineup. Domantas Sabonis recently has been. It just doesn't feel like they've had one concerted effort where everybody's good to go, start to finish. Can they pull this off? And I feel like the extension gives them another year. But if you're the Pacers, it gives yourself the peace of mind to say, you know what, we did our due diligence. We gave him the best shot we could. Wasn't able to do it. We couldn't get out of the first round time after time. Now we're comfortable making this decision.
Okay. It's just like when I look at the Miami Heat, especially in the last game, I mean, these are guys who give it like 1,000%. And Jimmy, he leads the charge. I mean, especially like against the Pacers, the last game, they were going after second chance points. It was at one point 26 second chance points for the Heat to just the 8. They wanted the ball more, and they were able to fight for it more. And when I look at the last game, I mean, Eric Spoelstra completely outclassed Nate McMillan. He took TJ Warren out the game by double teaming him a lot of the times. And then when he went on fast break, fouling to make sure he doesn't get his shots up. And it's just like the way he attacked, especially like Miles Turner. I mean, they had Bam Adebayo bring up the ball and attack Miles Turner because throughout this whole bubble run, Miles Turner has averaged 4 personal fouls a game. And, he has shown that, he can't play for a long period of time because he gets in foul trouble. And I just wonder, why Nate McMillan just, tells him, hey, I know you're really good on defense, but we need you on the offensive end because here's what Miles Turner brings. He doesn't have a post game, but he shoots the ball really well. He can spread the floor. He can make it so, their centers have to come out, and it can be really good for their team, but he doesn't utilize Miles Turner's skill set at all. And throughout his whole tenure coaching Miles, I feel like Miles has regressed in a way, and he just isn't, a threat on offense. I mean, he makes the occasional 3, but it's just, what did he add behind it? Is he really an option? Is he like the 5th, 6th option coming in? So,
well, and at what point? Sorry to cut you off there.
Oh,
but
you're good, man.
You blame McMillan. At what point does that just fall on Miles Turner? I mean, is that just the player he is? And if you match him up against Jonas Valanciunas, he's going to get beat. I mean, the guy's going to body him. He's not going to have a chance, and that's why you need a dog in Sabonis. And without him there, I don't know how that offense looks, and I don't know how the defense looks, because Miles Turner, honestly, he's a lengthy stretch 4 is what he is. And you're playing in the center role, and when you've got him and Sabonis playing the Twin Towers, those are puzzle pieces that don't really fit together, I don't think. So yeah. I hate to beat up on Miles Turner. I really like the guy. As a player, he's got some things he's really good at. A lot of things he really needs some work at. But I would say that's more on Miles Turner's shoulders than Nate McMillan. But I'm not saying that the job he's done has warranted a long contract, and I think they did well by not giving that to Nate McMillan.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've seen Jonas Valanciunas body him, especially in that first season. It's just that when Miles Turner goes against them top-tier centers, he gets bullied. He gets bullied by Jokic. He gets bullied by Embiid. I have seen it before. It's just that he doesn't rise to the occasion defensively against these top-tier centers and stuff like that. He eats on the smaller tier, but it's just the top tier that eats him coming in. And it's just that it's going to be interesting to see what plans they have coming in for the Pacers, and if Nate McMillan can rise to the occasion for this one. All right, so to end this episode, we're just going to give our first round predictions and who's going to come out on top in the bubble. So we're going to start with the Eastern Conference first, and then we're going to do Western Conference matchups. All right, so starting with the first seed versus the 8th seed, Bucks versus Orlando. Jake, who do you have coming out on top on that one, and what's the series going to be?
So I think this series is probably going to wrap it up in 5. I mean, I look at right now with Milwaukee. I mean, Milwaukee they've got – this is basically a break game for them, because right now with what I look at Orlando, I mean, Orlando's got some real good pieces, but they're still lacking depth. And I think that that's something that Orlando really needs to look more thoroughly into on the roster. But I think Giannis and I think a lot of these guys, they're getting at least a break out of this series, and they're going to take this one in 5 games because at this point, this is the determining factor now is Milwaukee going to represent the Eastern Conference now? And this is where a lot of the pressures are on Giannis, pressures are on Chris Middleton, and a lot of these guys that have to step up in order for the Milwaukee Bucks to shut out all these critics and all these doubters, about the Eastern Conference, because there are some teams out there that are very competitive, but this is only the first step towards it. And I think Milwaukee will definitely finish this one up in 5.
Gotcha. Chris, who do you have winning?
I've got the Bucks in 4. I think they're going to steamroll them. The Orlando Magic, the amount of number 1 picks and top 10 picks, lottery selections that they have, they're that team you go to if you're looking for young talent cheap and you're in the upper half of the league, because you're going to get it because they can't develop anybody. They're missing Jonathan Isaac, Aaron Gordon, and who? I would take Giannis in that matchup, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I could see each game by 20 easy.
Yep. And for me, I have this Bucks winning at 4, and I completely agree with that game their town. Because let's not forget, Victor Oladipo, Sabonis came from Orlando versus OKC and then to the Pacers. So it's just that they have one of the top 3 players in the league, Giannis, coming in. And it's just that it's going to be up to his cast, for this playoffs to come in and really help him and stuff. So I have them winning 4-0 in this series. All right, so our next matchup, we talked a lot about this, Pacers Heat. Who do we have winning this series?
I definitely do see the Miami Heat winning this series in 7 because I think it's going to be close matchups. But as I've said, the only thing that you can hope for in Indiana is that Miles Turner gets kids going. He's got to really step up. I mean, this is the only way truly for Indiana and for their coach to represent and look good, especially on his record, and hopefully get his first playoff win here. And I think that will give them some momentum. But I'm afraid that Jimmy Butler and them, they've got the heat. No pun intended. They've got the heat to steamroll. But I think it's not going to be as easy. But I do see this going at 7, and the Miami Heat will move on to the second round.
Kris, who do you have winning this one?
Yeah, I think the Heat got the better of the Pacers 2-0 in the regular season. I've got them winning in 6. Really, any outcome other than a sweep or the Pacers winning in 5 would not surprise me at all. I mean, if it goes 7-6, either way, yeah.
Okay, I got the Heat winning in 6. Then, it pains me to say this, but when I look at this group, I mean, I feel like they wanted more, that they are not afraid of any team coming in and they can take them on. I think they can take on Milwaukee deep. I think they can take on Raptors. And it just, when you look at the Pacers, I think that, they can just feast on them, especially Jimmy Lee in the charge. Eric Spoelstra, really like him as a coach. So I think that, this series can at least go 6 games with this one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with who do we have winning in Boston versus the 76ers, Jake?
Well, you probably already know exactly my pick and who I'm going with them because I couldn't stop talking about the struggles with Philadelphia. So I'm going with Boston here, but I do think they'll probably sneak in 1 game. So I think I'm going to go Boston in 5 because the fact of the matter is Boston's looked like a very competitive team, and a lot of people keep shunning Brad Stevens for whatever reason. But I look at it this way. Take Kyrie Irving out of the picture. Without him, they've never looked like a better team than they do right now. The fact that Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, and even a healthy Gordon Hayward has really shown that this team can be efficient in their shots and they're efficient on defense. So, and Brad Stevens is very much he's very much the architect, the guy that has the blueprints to really make this work. And without Kyrie in the mix, it really started to show what Boston is very capable of. They're my type of team that I do see as kind of the sleeper moving forward into the playoffs. But I'm going to take this one in 5 because, unfortunately, listen, Philadelphia fans who are watching this, the process has never worked, okay? It hasn't worked for a long time. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid don't work. You're going to have to trade either one of the two, and you better hope that if Brett Brown gets let go, there's a better coach that's right there behind him to at least fix the chemistry on this team, because I thought that was embarrassing to see Embiid and Shake Milton fighting on the bench. It just clearly shows how close to implosion that Philadelphia is. So I'm going to take Boston in 5.
I've got Boston, but in 6, I think they're going to play with 1 or 2.
Oh, Kris, your mic's cutting out.
I'm sorry?
Okay, you're good now. Your mic was cutting out.
Oh, okay. You know what? I think I've got Boston in 6, and they are my pick to come out of the East also. And by the way, Milwaukee, they seem to be the shoe-in from the media. I'm not convinced they're going to have it. Can Giannis make the big shots and come away out of the East? I'm not convinced yet. I know the talent's there. I know the hype's there, but does that translate to playoff victories? I'm not sold. When you're looking at the Raptors, I know Kawhi, is not there. It's still a great team. Can they fit up against the star power of Boston right now? I'm not sure. Gordon Hayward, I think, by the way, is going to be the X factor. We know Tatum. We know Brown. Can you get the third consistent option to at least stretch the defense, pull away double teams, whatever other teams are going to do? The only reason I've got them in 6 games rather than a sweep or 5 is Joel Embiid is still a problem in the middle, and I don't know if the Celtics are best equipped to handle that right now. But as you get further on in the playoffs, I think that load at center gets a little lighter.
Gotcha. And I have the Celtics winning in 6, and I'm gonna give them the 76ers again just because they have Embiid. But when I look at the Boston Celtics, I mean, they're just loaded. Jaylen Brown, he's been doing really well. Tatum's doing really well. Kemba. And it's just that when the 76ers are missing Ben Simmons coming in, it's just that it's not going to help him and stuff. And when I look at Brett Brown, this is probably, I think it's going to be his last year coming in. I mean, when you look at his track record, he hasn't developed any talent. I mean, the amount of bust that has been under his leadership, and he just underachieved with the amount of talent that he has, especially they probably should have been the Raptors last year, especially with Jimmy Butler on the team. And it's just that I think he's going to get outcoached by Brad Stevens coming into this series.
And by the way, I think that the 76ers, if they have to break up and trade one of these guys, the NBA wins, right?
Pretty much.
Trust the process. Trust the process. What's it guarantee you? Playoff appearances. That's about it. It doesn't guarantee you championships, Eastern Conference appearances.
Right. And if you want a process for me to believe in, how about believe in the Clippers process? Okay, they're stable. They got the right people in the offices. Golden State is one of them. I mean, look, don't even count Golden State out. They're smarter than people think. And Bob Myers, listen, I said this multiple times, but I think he's got a trick up his sleeve, and we're only waiting until the playoffs are over for that to happen.
Oh, yeah. Hey, that's going to be a really interesting 30 for 30 trust the process coming in. I can't wait to see it. So
by the way,
the
Golden State Warriors, if they get that number 1 overall pick, they could be looking at Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, and James Wiseman. How's that for a starting 5?
Ooh, that would be nice. If they finally get the big man they've needed for so long, hey, I'd be down for that. Actually, I wouldn't because I don't like the Warriors, but hey, it is what it is. All right, so going for our last series in the East, Raptors versus the Nets. Who we got, boys?
So I'm definitely going with the Toronto Raptors here, also in 5. The only reason why that I think that is because I don't count out guys like Spencer Dinwiddie or Karis LeVert. I think they're pretty good guys. But listen, whether you play good with or without Kyrie Irving, this Nets team, I don't even know what to think of them. They're interesting, but I can't really crack their code. And the way that I've also looked at Toronto as well, like Toronto, Nick Nurse has really proven himself to be a really good coach in this league. I know that it's not the same impact versus what they had last year's championship run with Kawhi, but guys like Pascal Siakam's really stepped up. Fred VanVleet's been another one who's been efficient with his shots, and Marc Gasol, don't count him out. He's been playing real good in his position, getting second chance buckets and rebounds. So, Toronto's really been looking interesting, and so I think they're definitely going to make it through this in 5. Look, we all know it's not Brooklyn's year this year. And we kind of already knew that once Kevin Durant went down, Kyrie Irving went down. They're basically waiting for next season to start. So I think that Toronto will take this one in 5, and that'll be an interesting matchup between Boston and Toronto in the second round.
I've got the Raptors in 5 as well, and I mean, you can go ahead and look forward to next year. They've got a solid foundation in place without their 2 best players on the court. A conversation we might be having this time next year, by the way, we already talked about Miles Turner. Jared Allen from Texas also is like Miles Turner 2.0, or maybe Miles Turner's the 2.0. They're the same player. They're a long, spindly guy. They can shoot from out deep. They can block, but you're not going to get much rim protection from big guys. Marc Gasol, he is what he is at this point in his career, but I still think he's going to be a handful for Jared Allen. And moving forward, Jared Allen's going to have to do the same things that Miles Turner is going to do, or we hope he's going to do if you're a Pacer fan. I don't know.
Yeah, and coming into the series, I think it's going to be a sweep by the Raptors. I mean, they have one of the best coaches in Nick Nurse. He knows how to take away the best player on the opposing team. He took away Giannis from the Bucks last year. And then when he took out Steph Curry, especially in the playoffs last year, I mean, he just knows how to attack their best player and make sure that the other players, can they make those shots, especially when they take away their best player. And it's just that Fred VanVleet, I mean, he's a scorer. He handles the ball really well. Kyle Lowry, he just gives it 100% as well. It's just Pascal Siakam looking really good too. It's just that the Nets, I don't think that, with their group, especially with missing so many of their core players, especially Kyrie, DeAndre Jordan, and stuff. It's just that I don't think that, they can win a game with what they have coming into the bubble. So coming into our next series, we're going to talk about the West team. So starting with Lakers, Blazers, and we talked about that topic. So let's just give our, scores coming into this one.
Yeah, I definitely, like I said, I'm sticking with Portland in this one only because I think the Lakers, they're going to use all of their players to the furthest of their extent. But what's really going to be tested is, will they have a stronger, capable bench? I mean, here's the funny thing. Even with Anthony Davis coming into Los Angeles, they are still over-reliant on LeBron to saving them in all these games. I mean, you've clearly seen how they saved him in the Clippers, how Kuzma ended up saving them against the Mavericks, and it's like, it's interesting. And so, but again, I'm sticking with Portland here in this one. I think Dame still does have enough time when time is needed. But of course, a lot of these guys, Yusuf Nurkic, Hassan Whiteside, and CJ McCollum are all guys that need to step up. And by the way, we're actually seeing the better version of Melo than we have in years. And I'm really, really happy about that because I've never shunned him because of his, his skills or his talent or any of this. But the problem of it is because it's his maturity. Is he able to take the off the bench role? And really, I'll much rather take a guy to be off the bench, put up 20, 25 points, and still be efficient. And he's very much been that guy. And so I really do believe that Portland, that has very much been their focal point. This will go all the way in 7, but it's all going to come down to the clutch shot. And I believe the guy who better than Dame really to take the clutch shot and just look at you in the face like this.
You know what? I'm still going Lakers in 6. And to put it simply, how many times has LeBron lost in the first round? None. Is that a tribute to LeBron's greatness? Maybe. And I'm not an NBA conspiracy theorist, but what I am saying is you think the NBA is going to let him out in the first round? I don't think so. That is why I've got the Lakers. We've seen it with the Pacers. Hello to whoever that was with the mask. But again, I think
that's my good friend, Jess.
The Lakers, they have enough to definitely get out of the first round. Portland, McCollum, I don't know if he's developed or at this point is still the number 2 guy that we thought he was even a year ago. I know he's a strong player, but can he do it enough for a full series against the star-studded cast of the Lakers? For me, no.
Gotcha. I think I'd say at least Lakers in 6. Hey, they can beat them in 5 games, so I'm going to say 5 games at this. I think that coming in, I think they're going to take away Damian Lillard from them. I mean, we've seen the Nets try to do this, so it's going to be up to CJ, Melo, Gary Trent to carry the load. So I got Lakers in 5 coming into this one. So next one we have Rockets versus Thunder. Who we got winning this one?
All right. I hate to be the guy to be reminding people about this over and over again, but look, we know Russell Westbrook's going to be out by game 1. And there's all the pressure once again on James Harden. Is he going to be the guy to be taking the clutch shot? And is he going to be the guy that's going to keep his composure when, look, we've seen James Harden in the playoffs multiple times. How many times has he not complained to refs about, unnecessary calls and all this other stuff? But this is where James Harden, this is what separates the boys from the men. It's going to get harder. It's going to get tougher. And that's where the Rockets really need to be set by this. I mean, look, you're talking about a group full of Smurfs, the smallest team in the NBA, and you're facing off against Oklahoma City, who, by the way, don't count out Steven Adams. He's the only tall guy that I think can be very defensive, and we're surprisingly seeing the best out of Oklahoma City at this point with Chris Paul. He's been an absolute story here, like pretty much building this team to where they had the potentials, maybe not fully, but they've looked much, much better, and they look even better without Russ, which is surprising to me. And so I think this is a game that may go all the way to 7. And I'm going to push my upset alert here, but I think we're going to have Oklahoma City upset Houston. And again, Houston, you once again have another problem, and it's not just the Astros cheating, but it's the fact that I can't identify this Rockets team. So that's why I'm going with 7 games, Oklahoma City Thunder all the way with Chris Paul.
Gotcha.
You know what? I thought I was going to be trendy hot take, but I'm going with OKC in 7 also. Steven Adams is a goon, and I love it.
Yeah.
Capella is not there anymore. We'll see what kind of dirty work he can get into. Love Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, by the way. James Harden, I mean, he's going to get the calls. We know that, but is that enough? Russell Westbrook, I know he's not going to be there. But how much is he adding to the team is the question we need to be asking. Long term, does that make sense? I mean, 2 ball-dominant guards. Westbrook's going to get his. Harden's going to get his. Where's the rest of it going? But that's not the question at hand. I'm going to take the Thunder simply because I would like to see it. I want to see a team just like the Pacers that got burnt by Paul George. They're rebuilding the right way. They're the team that has earned it, at least, in my mind.
Gotcha. And I think that, I think the Rockets can take this. And it's just that when I look at it team-wise, I mean, I like OKC a lot better. Chris Paul, Steven Adams, Gilgeous-Alexander coming in and stuff. They look like a real team, but it's just like the best player in the series is James Harden. And James Harden is just he's gonna be ball dominant and stuff. And it would have been real exciting to see the Westbrook Harden, experiment go into the playoffs and stuff like that. Because we were seeing it, these two friends can really play together and stuff, and like who's gonna take over for each game and stuff like that. So it's just that, I like the Rockets coming in, especially they got Rivers and stuff coming in. So I got them winning in at least 6 games coming in.
Can you imagine Chris Paul, the revenge tour, getting
that would be funny, yeah.
Stopping grounds? That would be something to watch, and that's something I think he can pull off, really pull that team together as a veteran.
Right. Yeah. And listen, no excuses and nobody poking eyes this time, James Harden. Okay. So this is it's no excuses from here on out. Like this is the time where refs are going to swallow the whistle. There's not going to be a whole lot of calls being made, but that's where he's really got to show the other version of himself. And that's where he's really got to step up at it, because look, we know Russ can't shoot threes. It's much like with Philadelphia's situation with Ben Simmons. They can't shoot. And that's where you have a over-reliant shooter in James Harden, but only as far as his game can go with them.
All right. So coming in to start the playoffs, we had the Nuggets and Jazz coming in, and what a game. A duel between Jamal Murray, Donovan Mitchell at the last couple minutes. We saw Donovan Mitchell he just exploded in this game coming in, attacking the basket, scoring 57, breaking their franchise record for scoring, but fortunately they fell in overtime. Who do we have coming into the series with the Nuggets leading by 1 game right now?
I'm staying confident right now with Denver. I mean, look, I was confident at one point in Utah, and I thought this was going to be an interesting team. Mike Conley was a great pickup for them because the fact of there's a veteran leader in opening up the floor at his position and even elevating guys like Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, and Joe Ingles. But after, once the shutdown happened and Rudy Gobert's antics really kind of changed up now the vibe of Utah. And now it's like they're all on the same court. Now, it was a great performance from Donovan Mitchell, don't get me wrong, but it's at the point of what else can we expect from Utah up to this point? Will they be able to be efficient on the floor offensively and defensively? But when you look at guys like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, this is a team that I think these two are going to last for a long time in Denver. They still may need a few more pieces because they're still young, but I do kind of see this series potentially going in 6 in this one, and I think Denver is going to get the best of this one. I was very confident in Utah, and I would have said otherwise, but after everything kind of crumbled and unfolded at this point, all you can hope for is a miracle out of Utah, out of Donovan Mitchell, to really kind of move the Jazz into the second round. But I'm pretty confident that I think the Joker's really going to get it done, and Denver's going to move on to the second round in 6.
Gotcha.
I've got the same. I'm going to say Denver in 5, though. And I'm going to say that because Jokic is a thug down low. And by the way, we did mention Joe Ingles. Bojan Bogdanovic is out for the season, and that is a really, really big miss for them because he's somebody you can throw on Jamal Murray. He's somebody that you can throw on a wing. He's a versatile defender. He's not the upper echelon, but he's somebody that gets the job done. His three-point shooting is not there. Joe Ingles looked old today, and he has through the bubble run and the select few games I was able to watch of theirs throughout the season. I just don't think they have it. Donovan Mitchell's going to be there. Rudy Gobert, how much of an offensive presence is he actually? We know about the rim protected. We know about his ability to block. What does he give you on the offensive side? Is he a number 2 scorer? And I don't think so.
All right, and I also have the Nuggets winning in 6. It's just like this game, it deteriorated too for the Jazz. Can Donovan Mitchell carry the load for them? Because, at first couple minutes, he tried passing it out and facilitating to the team, but they just weren't hitting shots. So he started taking over, and, he got the lead for the Jazz in the last couple minutes. And it's just like the talent for the Nuggets is they have too much talent going on. I mean, Jokic, Michael Porter Jr. has been having a great run in the bubble. He was looking fantastic in those first couple minutes. He back-to-back threes, looking fearless, doing that and stuff. So I like the talent, coming out. And Jamal Murray was, he had a really good performance. He was just fearless, especially in the second quarter, hitting threes and then carrying that load in the last couple minutes to force overtime and stuff. So I have the Nuggets winning in 6 games. It's just that what happens when Donovan Mitchell doesn't have it going? Who's gonna lead the charge for them coming in? So it's gonna be interesting to see in this series.
I agree, and it's gonna be really tough. I think that's the best game you get out of Mitchell.
Yeah,
and it wasn't enough. Pretty disheartening. And like you mentioned, Michael Porter Jr. looks like that broken back's back to normal, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting to see, his talent. I mean, he was gonna be, a top pick coming in. It's just that, those injuries, made him fall in the draft and stuff. So the Nuggets got lucky picking him up at the 14th pick. So
I saw the tweet was ESPN Bleacher Report, one of those two, that is shaming half the league for not picking him up. Yeah, he had a broken back.
Yeah, very risky and stuff like that. And I think that's how Joel Embiid fell to, the 76ers back in that draft as well. All right, so going into our last series and to end the episode, we're going to be talking about Clippers, Mavs. Now, we discussed this series before, but who do we have winning this one?
Oof. Well, like I said, I mean, you already know who I'm representing here in this game. And listen, I think this is going to be a really good series, but I do see the Clippers taking this one in 6. I know it's not going to be as easy as everybody thinks it is, because the fact of the matter is you can't count Luka Doncic out. This guy's been red hot. He's been more than just points and statistics. He's been a guy that's really shown you what he can truly do on the floor. And the energy, the vibe that Dallas brings to the table is not going to be easy for a team like the Clippers, who are stacked both on their starting 5 and on their bench. I mean, they've got guys that can be in your face like Patrick Beverley, Marcus Morris, and so many others, and even Montrezl Harrell. And so hopefully we'll see some real good quality minutes out of Kawhi and even in Paul George. But I've said this multiple times, and even in the game against the Lakers, is second half Paul George is the Paul George you all should be afraid of. The fact that he can come out after a little bit of a good, maybe a rough first half, but this is a guy that can really put up points, and he's really shown that. He's shown a lot of percentage on the floor and field goals and even on 3-point percentages. And that is something that is lethal and deadly to the Clippers' advantage. And I think that that's something that will really help them carrying the Clippers to round 2 in 6 games against Dallas.
And I think when you look at players, high ceiling, high floor, you've got Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, extremely high floor. You know what you're getting night in, night out, barring, a catastrophic night or an injury or anything. But I think that's enough to push them through in this series over the long haul. I've got them in 6. I do think Doncic is going to show up in a couple different games and really leave his mark. I'd be looking for a 35-point triple-double. I think it's going to happen in the series, no matter who he's playing against. Porzingis, the jury is still out for me. I know he's 7'3". I get the allure of him firing fadeaway 3-pointers with ease, but I'm not as sold on him being a superstar in the league, and that realistically is what you need is 1 or 2 guys to go in, night out. Kawhi Leonard's going to come up big. And even if he doesn't, he'll have those understated 20-point, 10-rebound, 5-assist games, but he's going to be hustling. He's going to be opening up the floor for everybody else and for his teammates to succeed.
Gotcha. And I have I have the Clippers winning in 7 games. I mean, I think this is the biggest like upset potential coming in. It's just that when I look at the Mavs, they have like size, like their matchup size wise. I mean, it's going to be a nightmare. Boban, Bogdanovic, also Porzingis coming in is just who's going to guard those people. But I think that with Kawhi, being with all the defensive guys they have, Patrick Bev and stuff like that, I think that they can make it really tough for Luka coming in. If like it's going to be a real physical series, and what does Luka struggle with? Going against physical teams because they will rough him up. And is he ready for this challenge, especially against a real physical team like this? So it's going to be really interesting. This series is going to be really interesting. I think this series will go the distance in 7 games, won by the Clippers. All right, then. So that will end it for this episode. Kris, I want to thank you again for coming on this show and stuff like that. Thank you so much for coming on to this show.
Oh, anytime. I appreciate it, guys.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. Not a problem, man.
Yeah, thanks. We'll love to have you back on in the future and stuff like that. So thank you again for watching, the Bench Report on at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.